Welcome to Two Fat Brokers podcast or videocast. I'm Ben from Abu Dhabi.
Barney from Dubai.
Today we're going to be talking about a new announcement. Well, it was announced a while ago, but it's just recently been put in place by Dubai, and that is retirement visas. So, just to give a brief outline, you can now get a 5-year retirement visa if you're over the age of 55 and you have one of the following: a property worth 2 million, a million in savings, or an income of 20,000 dirhams. So you can get I think it's a month, yeah, and I think it's a 5-year retirement visa.
So renewable every 5 years.
Yeah. So I think this is, and we've done another podcast on this. This is one of the initiatives by the UAE government as a whole. Specifically here, we're talking about Dubai, although this has been debated by Abu Dhabi as well. In an attempt to get people to stay in the Emirates longer, spend their money here, because obviously if you've got a job here and you lose your job or you retire, you have to go back to your home country, even if you were born here, if you're not a citizen. So it's an attempt by the government to get people to stay here longer, even if they're not productive working members of society.
But they do have an income of 20,000 dirhams a month.
Yes.
And they do have asset value here. So they would be considered somebody that's gonna spend money and boost the economy.
But they might have an income of 20,000.
That's true, they might.
Yeah.
So okay, I think, let me caveat everything I say after this, because I might be a little bit controversial, which he's gonna hate. I think it's fantastic that the UAE are creating these kind of initiatives to persuade people to be here longer. Obviously we've got the investment visa, we've got the gold card, now we've got the retirement visas. My question is, who would retire to the UAE when the cost of living, not necessarily housing, but the cost of living is so expensive? And again, anecdotally, I have a friend of mine who's been here for a couple of weeks, and he has been living in a hotel, not a particularly expensive hotel, and he's managed to spend about 20,000 dirhams having been here for 15 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good going.
I mean, that's dinners, that's lunches, and I think if you go to many other major cities, the cost of living is exponentially less.
Well, it's a choice, right? I mean, some people might have been born in Dubai or Abu Dhabi and their friends are here, so they want to stay here as opposed to go back to wherever nominally their home is, or they might have lived here for 20 years and they want to stay. I think there's a lot cheaper cities here than here, but people come here initially to work. But some want to stay, and if they want to stay, let them. It won't be for everyone.
And my next question is, okay, so you have a investor's visa which are valid for 6 months and they're renewable, and I think they cost around 11,000 dirhams every 6 months. Now my question is, most people who retire into the UAE are not going to be here during the summer. Is that fair? Nobody really.
Unless it's your proper home. But yeah, I guess if you've got the option, you go on holiday.
So how does it compare to an investor's visa, which is 6 months for 11,000 dirhams?
I don't really know what an investor visa. What is that?
So if you own a property, I think it's over 1 million dirhams, you're eligible for a 6 months investor visa.
Okay. I mean, obviously you've got to renew that every 6 months.
Yeah.
Obviously you need a property with it. So if this is someone who doesn't have a property but has 1 million in savings or 20,000 dirham income, it might be valuable for them. But also it's a longer term security, right? It's 5 years as opposed to 6 months renewable. Presumably every 6 months you've got to re-qualify for it and reapply. I mean, the actual short-termness of it, even for 5 years, is still an issue. I would want the retirement visa to be longer, because as soon as you're 55, fine, 5-year visa is great, but what if you're 80 or 85 and you want this visa because you want to,
presumably
live here for the rest of your life? You don't want to be 85 and all of a sudden, you don't qualify for this visa for some reason, and then you have to move and start a new life somewhere else at 85. So you want that, you want that security through. And I think
presumably if you meet one of the 3 requirements, you then get to renew it for another 5 years.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe you've got 1 million in savings and then you're eating 3 years savings, and then you've only got 950,000, so you don't qualify anymore. So then you have to leave. So I think that's an issue.
Well, that's up to the individual. I mean, there are reasons that you would have your visa in any country revoked, aren't there? This is one of their caveats. I understand.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there's no way that you can be a burden on the state if you're a retiree here, right? Because you need health insurance. You don't have health insurance, So and obviously there's no welfare if you're homeless or you don't have any money. So you can't be a burden on the state. It's not possible. The state is never going to pay for you. Apart from in terms of police and roads and things like that, it's not going to pay for you if you run out of money. So I think they should offer longer term, lifetime retirement visas if you've worked here for a while or you hit these thresholds initially.
I think now we're paying VAT as expatriates. I think there's going to be more of a calling for that.
Yeah.
But I think for that to be possible, then taxation, as it were, would need to increase.
I don't think so, because you're not a burden on the state. You're paying rent. You're taking up rent somewhere. You're buying
the roads,
food,
electricity, air conditioning.
Yeah, but you're paying for electricity and air conditioning. The only things you're not paying for is police, roads,
the malls, and things like that, which are semi-government owned.
But you're spending, and that's what the government wants. The reason why it's having these things is it wants more people here to take up real estate and buy, but it wants more people here to spend money and plow that money back.
Tourism, I suppose, to a degree, because if your grandparents are living here, you're more likely to fly out to see them. I mean, obviously the UAE is a huge tourist destination.
Yeah.
So there's all of these residual factors that.
And your grandparents will fly as well back to their home countries or wherever
using one of the national carriers
and come back again. Yeah. I mean, I don't see there's a downside to it, because you're just not a burden on the state. So I think it's a very positive thing, and actually in a way, it's a really interesting. Because right now, from coronavirus, a lot of people have lost their jobs and they've had to leave the country. Whereas, let's say, we're from the UK. If we lost our jobs in the UK, we'd stay. We'd stay and we'd rent and we'd spend money and we'd still be helping contribute to that economy. But here in the UAE, you lose your job, you've got to leave and go back to your home country.
Unless you qualify for an investor visa.
Unless you get a visa in another way. And so a lot of people talk about it's great to export unemployment, but only if you're having to support those unemployed people. So let's say we became unemployed here in the UAE, we wouldn't get support from the government. We wouldn't be a cost to the government, but we'd still be paying rent and buying things in malls and buying food and still be contributing to the economy for as long as we can. And then at some point we decide, we'll run out of money or whatever the case might be, and then we go back to our home countries. So I think exporting unemployment for the UAE is not that valuable in the way, you'd love it if you were UK or something and you could just send all your unemployed somewhere else, because they're a huge burden on the state. Obviously, I don't really mean that to the UAE. It's free to keep unemployed people here. I mean, the only downside would be an increase in crime, I guess. So
destitution.
Yeah, exactly. But I think this visa is really a great thing, because you can see that the government is now wanting to change the look of the UAE from somewhere where you import labor because you need it, and once you're finished with that labor, you get rid of it, to actually importing people because of their spending power.
I think it also shows that the UAE is starting to understand that they need to be a more inclusive society, and as much as exactly what you're just saying, they need. Because the indigenous population is not that big, and they have their own skill sets, they begin to realise that they need people to populate the city on a longer term basis. When I moved here and you moved here 12 years ago, this was a place where you came, you earned money, you sent it home, and you went home and you followed your cash, and there you retired or you did whatever. Whereas now they're trying to make it more of a city for life, which, at the end of the day, with all of the visa changes that they're making, is a fantastic thing. Yeah,
I saw a good interview with Tim Cook from Apple, and they were talking to him about immigration. Tim Clark? Anyway, about immigration in the US, and obviously they're clamping down on immigration. And he said, listen, if I was president, I'd run this place like a business. I would import intellectual capital. I'd get the cleverest people, I'd get them to come and work in my country, and I get them to stay there, because some of the biggest.
What China are doing, but they're just not letting you leave.
I don't think China's not that keen for other people to come in.
They do. Proprietary information. Anyway.
But yeah, so even if one of those super clever people who works wherever, they lose their job, what they'll often do is start their own business, all right? And build a business, there and use their own intelligence and knowledge to build a business. Here in the UAE, I think it's missing out there because as soon as you lose your job, unless you've got all that prepared, you have to leave. And maybe you'll go and start that business in your own country. So I think it'd be a great idea for the UAE to import that intellectual capital because it's a fantastic place to live in, and there's nowhere really like it in this area where you can draw from Eastern Europe, the whole of the Indian subcontinent, North Africa, even sub-Saharan Africa. So you can actually draw a huge amount of intelligence in here, but you don't want it to just come in here and, let's say, work for the government and then leave. You want them to come in here and stay and build their businesses. And there's a huge, I don't know what it's like in Dubai, but right now in Abu Dhabi, there's a huge drive towards tech and startups and all that kind of fintech, medtech, everything.
SMEs are what drive
intellectual capital. Yeah, so I think going back to what we're talking about here in the retirement visa, hopefully it's a thin end of the wedge of a big attempt by the UAE to bring brains and intelligence into the UAE. Yeah, and keep them
as
here.
mentors.
They've always been good at bringing brains into the UAE. Great examples here.
I reckon they get rid of us.
Tweedledum and Tweedledee. Two fat brokers. Yeah.
We have been Two Fat Brokers. What a great place to end on. Thank you very much. We have been Two Fat Brokers.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.